Hi everyone, I am Olivia Livingston and I currently attend the University of South Carolina and I am obtaining my Master's of Public Health and I'm focusing on environmental health science. And so in this video, I will be discussing the basics of climate change, the economics of climate change, and also some potential solutions to try and address climate change. And so now let's begin with some of the science and impacts of climate change. Climate change is affected by greenhouse gas emissions such as methane, nitrous oxide, fluorinated gases, and carbon dioxide. These gases are categorized as greenhouse gases because they are similar to a garden greenhouse. If you look around me, you can see that I am currently standing in a greenhouse. It is warmer in here than it is outside, which is exactly how greenhouses work. They stay warm inside by trapping the warmth that is obtained from sunlight, and greenhouse gases work in the same manner. Sunlight enters the atmosphere and is used to warm the globe, but greenhouse gases are emitted by humans through a number of ways, and they also warm the globe. Both sunlight and these gases are trapped in the Earth's atmosphere and warm it, just like how warmth from sunlight warms up greenhouses because it is trapped in. Carbon dioxide has the highest emissions of the greenhouse gases, consisting of over 80% of total greenhouse gas emissions. This is because carbon dioxide is emitted through burning fossil fuels like coal and oil. Thus, driving a regular gasoline car, like a majority of these around me, emits carbon dioxide into the air. Look at the amount of cars in the parking lots around you and just those everywhere. A majority of these cars are emitting greenhouse gases. Just imagine if every single person in the world had their own carbon-emitting car. The human population is approximately 7.7 billion people and is constantly increasing. This means that our carbon footprint on the globe will continue to increase unless we change our habits. By continuing to emit greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, we are trapping more heat. The planet is becoming warmer every year due to the large amount of greenhouse gases being stuck here in the atmosphere, which is having impacts on the globe and population health. This warming is expected to be accompanied by decreased crop yields, increased threats to human health, and more frequent extreme weather events. The planet could also face rising sea levels from melting of the ice in the Arctic and destabilization of the ocean circulation that helps redistribute the planet's heat. The ice melting could also cause extreme cold weather events in certain places. Climate change is also causing wetter areas to get wetter and drier areas to get drier. In addition, the warmer climate is causing stronger hurricanes because the heat provides more energy. We live close to the coast here in Columbia, South Carolina, so that is definitely something that affects us. We already get hurricane warnings almost every year, so stronger hurricanes in the years to come is worrisome. This is also incredibly costly to coastal cities because every disaster costs about $1 billion. The warmth is also causing more fires, which is dangerous and costly to handle as well. This is worrisome for states like California, where there are already droughts and wildfires. This warmth affects the whole globe, but let's focus on the United States in more detail. To display some of these changing weather patterns, I have compiled some of the weather patterns of certain cities all around the U.S. provided by the New York Times. To begin, let's take a look at Greenville, North Carolina. These graphs show the average temperature and average precipitation of Greenville, North Carolina in 2017 and how they have changed from the average temperature and precipitation in the past. The temperature has gone up by almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and the total precipitation has slightly increased by ½ inch. Now let's jump down to Miami, Florida to see how their average temperature and precipitation have changed. In 2017, their average temperature increased by about 2 degrees, and their average precipitation greatly increased by over 20 inches. Now when we look at the Southwest in Dallas, Texas, their average temperature increased by almost 3 degrees, and their average precipitation decreased by a little over 2 inches. If we move over to the West Coast in Los Angeles, California, we see that their average temperature has increased by a little over 2.5 degrees, and their average precipitation has decreased by 1 inch. This is especially important because LA and surrounding areas in California are in a drought. Now let's head up north to Seattle, Washington. Their average temperature has increased slightly by over half a degree, and their average precipitation increased by over 10 inches. This is interesting because Seattle is already known for their rainy forecasts. If we move eastward to Detroit, Michigan, we see that the average temperature increased by 2 degrees and that precipitation also increased by 2 inches. Our final stop in our journey across the U.S. is in New York City, New York. The average temperature rose by almost 1.5 degrees and average precipitation decreased by almost 5 inches. So as you can see, all of the regions across the United States have experienced altered weather patterns in 2017. This will continue to happen in the future unless we decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. Not only is there scientific evidence supporting climate change, but there is economic evidence as well. This is what we will dive into next. Climate change and emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere lead to market failures. This is because they have negative impacts and the cost of the goods or services in the free market do not reflect the adverse effects of climate change. This makes greenhouse gas emissions negative externalities. To better explain what this means, think of the effects of smoking cigarettes. When people smoke in public, the surrounding people are exposed to secondhand smoke, which we know has negative impacts on health. Thus, many places all over the U.S. have banned smoking, such as in restaurants and airplanes. The same goes for climate change. It has direct impacts on the earth and population health. As discussed earlier, greenhouse emissions are warming temperatures all around the globe and are having effects on sea levels and ice glaciers. Thus, there are negative externalities of climate change that lead to market failures. And in the presence of externalities, regulation is almost always needed to reach the socially efficient or optimal outcome. This is similar to placing a ban on smoking in certain areas for the betterment of the public. In order to reach a socially efficient or optimal outcome in the carbon market, British Columbia introduced a carbon emissions tax. This tax caused the use of carbon to become more expensive to companies, and as a result, carbon emissions decreased. Now, many opponents to the idea of having a carbon tax are because they fear that the regulation on carbon would negatively impact the economy. However, when the British Columbia introduced a carbon tax, their economy actually grew faster than its neighbors. Granted, some markets would be impacted, such as the coal industry. This is why many people in Virginia are worried about regulation on greenhouse emissions because of the heavy reliance of the coal industry there. Coal is a large part of their economy, thus by eliminating the use of coal, their economy would be negatively impacted in those areas. Even if this is the case, there is a growing market for other energy sources such as solar and wind power. Thus, those coal towns in Virginia could potentially switch from being reliant on the coal industry to rely on more green energy sources. To improve population health and the Earth's health, we must place a price on carbon and consider the negative externalities associated with climate change. The vast majority of economists believe that the market is damaged or will be damaged by climate change. Economists disagree with the cost, quantity, and the timing of carbon emissions in the market, but they do agree that there is a market failure that needs to be addressed. About 77% of economists believe that the United States should reduce greenhouse emissions with a carbon tax instead of through an income tax. This is because a Pigouvian tax or a corrective tax does not cause dead weight loss, so it is efficient. So we need to push for a nationwide carbon tax here in the United States and also encourage other countries to implement a carbon tax to decrease our carbon emissions globally. The U.S. currently has a Clean Power Plan that mandates carbon dioxide emissions reductions for coal, oil, and gas power plants. However, the former EPA administrator, Scott Pruitt, proposed to repeal the Clean Power Plan, but the Supreme Court placed a temporary stay on the plan's implementation. The United States needs to keep the Clean Power Plan intact because it allows the states to create their own reduction goals. So this allows states to have more flexibility, but also reduce our carbon impact on the globe. Under the Clean Power Plan, South Carolina would reduce our carbon emissions by 35% by 2030, with the majority of the reductions within the transportation sector. Another policy that the United States has is a federal income tax credit for purchasing a hybrid or electric car. South Carolina offers a state income tax credit equal to about 20% of the federal income tax credit. These policies offer incentives for citizens to purchase a less carbon-emitting vehicle. More of these green policies need to pass to provide more incentives for the public to be more eco-friendly and to reduce our carbon impact. However, while policy may be important to addressing climate change, real change begins with you personally. There are so many different ways that you can help fight the problem. First, you have to actually address the problem and admit that us humans are at fault. So once you do that, the ways that you can reduce your carbon impact are endless. For example, instead of providing coal in our stockings, we can put solar panels in them. So what are you going to do to reduce your carbon impact? Let's change the world.